The BOOcast synth of the month is the ARP 2600. This is Alan R. Perlman, electrical engineer extraordinaire, who, after working for NASA designing op-amps and extremely precise radiation detectors, went on to found Tonus, soon to be renamed ARP, after his own initials with which he signed his blueprints. ARP's first instrument, the 2500, was a modular monster, which makes a memorable appearance in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where at the climax of the film it is instrumental in communicating with the alien mothership. Their next creation was this, the 2600. Designed to be more affordable than the 2500 and, with its semi-modular design, more portable, more easily programmable, and was emblazoned with a front panel design intended to make sound synthesis clear to anyone lucky enough to touch it. And in fact, many 2600s ended up in schools and universities, as well as in the hands of Herbie Hancock, Stevie Wonder, Edgar Winter, Pete Townsend, Daniel Miller, Depeche Mode, Add N2X. The list goes on and on. The 2600 even gave R2-D2 his voice. It seems like the science fiction world could tell that there was a little piece of NASA inside this revolutionary machine. Ooh. So, first of all, I'd like to say thank you to Simon Forsyth for lending me his Korg 2600M. This is the first time I've ever actually put my hands on a real ARP 2600. The only contact I've had with this incredible synthesizer is through the software version by Wayoutware, the Time Warp 2600. But here it is in the flesh, and even in its 2/3 original size version as it is here, it's quite an overwhelming collection of controls, isn't it? I mean, look at this. Feels like I've been asked to land a 747 or bring an RBM K1000 reactor under control. But, as you'll see, it's actually a lot simpler than it looks. And in fact, well, let's have a quick overview. So we have 3 oscillators, 1, 2, 3, with these controls here. As you'll see, the oscillators are not duplicates of each other. They're actually quite different. We have the filter with its mixer and the 2 envelopes here, and the VCA here with its various inputs, and a spring reverb, and an audio mixer, and various controls for stereo and stuff. And down here we have a thing which is rather disturbingly called the voltage processor, and a sample and hold unit, and noise here. So what is this? It's a 3 oscillator, 1 filter, 2 envelopes, no LFO. This is a bit like a mini Moog, isn't it? Let's listen to these oscillators. So the first oscillator that shows up in the mixer is VCO1. Let's push that up in the filter, open the filter up, and then how do you get sound out of it? So you need to bring up the VCF into the amplifier and bring up one of the envelopes. So there we go. So this is VCO1, which is by default a square wave, and the pitch of VCO1 is controlled here. Very, very wide range. But there is a fine-tune control. Synthesizer manufacturers, please take note. This is so useful and helpful when you're trying to get it actually in tune. And we also have a switch here which brings it from keyboard control, turns the keyboard off and puts it into low frequency mode, which is LFO. Basically, the tuning and the low frequency mode switches are the same for all 3 oscillators. Let's listen to oscillator 2. So just turn down 1 and bring up 2. Now on oscillator 2, again, we get the pulse, but on oscillator 2, we get a pulse width control. And then oscillator 3 gives us a saw. So let's bring these together. So you can get massive 3 oscillator sounds. Let's bring these all into tune with each other. On this Korg 2600M we have the low pass filter, which is a 24 dB low pass filter, which gives us tuning control at the top and fine tune, even fine tune for the filter, which is useful because by default the filter is set to track the keyboard. Bring the resonance up, so we can bring up that, and I'm just going to bring up the envelope here. Bring up this envelope. So here we've got one oscillator and the filter in self-resonance. Oh, let's bring up the others. That's the filter, which went through its own revisions. The oscillators went through several revisions through the life of the 2600, as did the filter. The first one was basically a copy of the Moog ladder filter, replaced it with the 4074 filter, which was always a little bit darker, and that's emulated here. Well, they sound different anyway. So far you see 3 oscillators and a filter and 2 envelopes. I mean, you could say that says Moogie until you look here underneath all of the underneath everything. But let's start with the oscillators. Each of these sliders is a modulation source. So for example, let's just look at oscillator 3. Push this slider up. So here we see oscillator 3 is just by the pushing of one slider gets modulated by oscillator 2. Push another slider and it's modulated by the envelope. Push another slider and it gets modulated by noise. This is all on the front panel without any patching. Straight away we're in modulation land. All of the oscillators are like this. So oscillator 1 gives you sample and hold. Let's pop down here. What sample and hold does is it takes a noise signal, which we get from here, push it up to white, and it takes a snapshot at a set series of times, which is determined by this clock, which I can also use it to trigger the envelopes. Let's just do that so you can see the speed. This is what the white noise sounds like. What the sample and hold circuit does is it's got a little clock here, which we can speed up and slow down. There we go. So that at those intervals, it's sampling the white noise, and whatever, because white noise is a random signal, each time it samples it, it's a different value, and it passes that value over to here. So let's listen to oscillator 1, and we'll just put the modulation level up. So there we go. It does that classic computer noise thing here. And does it with all of them. That's oh no, we can't do it on the third one. So great, huh? And we can also modulate oscillator 1 by the ADSR. So that's clearly asking to be turned into a drum sound. Let's put some white noise in there. And we can also modulate it with VCO2. VCO2 we have, again, sample and hold. We have ADSR. We can be modulated by the square of VCO1, which should slow it down. Useful. We also have pulse width modulation. Now, this is the first of the strange design choices that ARP made back in 1971, which is that the source for the pulse width is noise, which gives you that effect, which is quite odd. For example, I mean, what you really want pulse width is to do this kind of thing. Maybe put a sine wave in there. So, is there a sine wave on this thing? Yes, there is. But it's on VCO2, which is another... Yeah, but if we want to get another signal into there, what we can do is patch it. So you take a lead, you put a patch lead in here, it breaks that connection to the noise generator that's already there, and now it's looking for something to come in here, and what we can give it is the square wave from oscillator 1. Let's give it that. There isn't a sine wave that we can give it. We can give it its own sine wave, but that's just it's too fast to be noticeable. Give it the sawtooth from 3. That's a bit better, I suppose. But what we really want to do is to get some kind of like sine wave or triangle wave into here, and this is where the voltage processor comes in. So to get a triangle to modulate your pulse width modulation, you take your square out of here, you put it into the bottom of the voltage processors, you take another lead, take the output from this bottom voltage processor and put it into the modulator slot on oscillator 2. Now what we've got here, we've still got our square, but this gives us a lag control, which is a sort of rounding off of the edges. It's a bit like slew, actually. In fact, I wonder if slew is just a different word for the same thing. Probably is. So we rounding off the edges of this square wave. You can hear that's quite sharp at the moment. And there we go, that's a little bit better. Speed it up a bit. So there's a rather good pulse width modulation sound. This is the beauty of it. There is almost limitless patching that can go on between any of these modules in here. You can get anything to do anything to anything else, just about, which is rather special. So even without putting patch leads in, there is so much audio rate modulation goodness. And actually, while we're here, let's now engage the dual spring reverb units, and these are real spring reverbs inside this. Oh, it sounds so good. Talking about modulation, straight into the filter we've got VCO2 modulating. Which gives us all of this loveliness without any patching. Yes, okay, so let's have a look at the VCA. So at the moment I'm putting the attack release envelope into the VCA. This gives us an, turn that off, an organ type amplitude envelope, but we can have attack and release only. But if I wish, I can put the ADSR into the VCA. And by default the ADSR is linked to the filter, which is kind of why I like to put the AR into the amplifier so that we get all that beautiful resonance coming through. Ooh, yes. It just sounds so bloody good, doesn't it? As I say, this is the first time I've ever really had a real one in front of me. Quite a treat. So let's go back to this sample and hold unit here. So I'm going to modulate oscillator 2 with the sample and hold. Let's just tune it up a bit. Here we go. As I said, what the sample and hold does is it's sampling the white noise, giving us a random value each time this thing takes a snapshot of the white noise. And we do have a choice of noise. We've got white, pink, which sort of tones down the range, and low frequency, which I suppose is brown. They're trying not to say brown noise here. I have no idea why they didn't want to say brown noise. But there we go, we've got this. But we don't have to put white noise into here, and a nice thing to do is, instead of white noise, we'll put the sawtooth from oscillator 1 in and put it on low frequency mode. And there it is. So what this does is it's sampling the sawtooth as it comes up, and so we're getting a stepped glissando type thing. But I'll change the speed. We get quite melodic little patterns coming out of it. Amazing. And as we go faster and faster, you find those sweet spots where it's... I mean, I could get lost here for, like days. I'm just going to set this envelope to be triggered by the internal clock. Let's try the square. So that's interesting. So the square wave has only got 2 values. It's not got a slope like the sawtooth, so it's jumping between those 2 values. Oh, we're almost in the land of rhythm here, aren't we? Let's put this onto... In fact, we can have both. The thing about going into the VCA, we can have both the ADSR and the AR at the same time, so we can give ourselves a little bit of extra transient pluck at the beginning there. It's pretty good. Put some white noise in. We've got a ring modulator at the end here, which will, as default inputs, are VCO1 and VCO2. So let's just turn up both of them and bring that up. But we can obviously put anything we like in. So I'm going to put VCO3 into VCO1. Quite interesting tuning there. So the sample and hold is coming out of there. I'm going to split this sample and hold signal. So we've already got it coming in here. Let's split it just for some fun. We can put it into this multiple, which allows us to make copies of that sample and hold signal. And we'll put it somewhere else. Let's put it in the... It's a bit loud. Put it in the... Oh wow, that's lovely. I think we've got some half-decent, weird, metallic bongos here. And then as if that wasn't enough, we can also modulate each of these, well... Oh yeah, it's possible to get lost like a mad. Let's put up the reverb. In fact, let's not bother doing that. Let's lag it up. So I'm going to take the SH out, put it into the multiple, get a copy of itself. Take that out, put it into the slew or the lag generator. Let's put it into here. Yeah, okay. Pretty nice hi-hat. Okay. Stop. Yes, that's called getting carried away. So up here we have an audio in section, which is what Pete Townsend used to do all those guitar-y choppy noises on whatever that song was, and it's also what R2-D2 was made using. I'll get onto that in a sec if I can. But you can also make this thing duophonic. So Tom Oberheim was originally a stockist, originally sold these, and he designed a keyboard which allowed you to make it duophonic, and you can do that with this one as well. So it's basically what you can do on the Odyssey, which came a year after this. Allowing you to play duophonically. It is possible to play 3 notes at a time, but I have no idea how you do that. It's also possible to use the ring modulator as a VCA, so you take, for example, an envelope input into it, and then we can take noise coming out. Where's the noise? Noise, please. There we go. Put it into the other one. Push them both up, and then take the output from the ring modulator and put it into... Oh no, it's already there, silly me. The output from the ring modulator shows up here. So we've got a... Just for example, we've got a filtered... I can put unfiltered noise in there now, which is controlled by the envelope. So it's responding to differences. It's an exclusive OR gate. There you go. Let's get some electronics in here. That's how this ring modulator works. It's the same as the ring modulator on the Odyssey, and its peculiarities are that it responds to changes. So when the signal is changing, then you get signal. But any electronics engineers in the audience, please feel free to correct me. But the interesting thing is when you lift your finger off the key, you get to hear the kickback of the white noise as you lift your finger off. In fact, I can show you on this key. Hear that? And that's all because this is interacting with the ring modulator, working as a VCA. So there are probably a million things I've missed. You can, of course, put an external signal in and use it to be chopped up by the filter and all kinds of things, but you can also use the external signal to control pitches, which is how the voice of R2-D2 was made. I'm going to try and do that now. Here we go. So that's how Ben Burt made the noise of R2-D2. So there's a microphone coming in here, and it's going into the envelope follower, which is controlling the pitch of oscillator 2, and the level into the VCA. And there's ring mod set up between oscillator 1 and 2, and that's kind of how it works. Oh, and there's some sample and hold happening in oscillator 1, which is... Ooh. And in an interview, Ben Burt said it was one of the most difficult things he had to do. He had to create a voice for this little robot, R2-D2, which was capable of acting alongside Sir Alec Guinness, for example, without using any words. So I think he did a great job. And you can just hear my voice coming through, can't you? Ha 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 ha! Yes. Whoa! I am become R2-D2. So that's the ARP 2600, or the Korg ARP 2600M. Oh my goodness, I mean, I can't even begin to scratch the surface of this thing, because it's just so incredible. I mean, it's basically limitless. Oh, here in this patch, by the way, I've taken the trigger from the incoming sequence from the KeyStep Pro and taking the trigger out and turning that into the clock. So the clock is now modulating the filter with a sample and hold, but timed with the incoming keys. Yeah, okay, it's difficult to talk while this is going on. So that's the ARP 2600.
Thank you very much for watching.